Alright guys, welcome back to our regular programming. So, one of the things that is mostly asked in the comments is, what champions do you actually need to complete all the dungeons, right? But for the most part, I can tell you all the legendary champions, all the epics, but what most people in the most early game need to know is the rare champions that can make a difference. So we're gonna cover that in this video. And I'm gonna tell you guys which champions you should 5-star and maybe even 6-star their rare champions and below. If you want to become a part of my squad in Raid, click on my link in the description right now and get a free legendary Karato as well as 4 epics as you level up. Let me show you how. Log out of Player in Play on PC and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champion. That's all you need to do to get a free Karato as well as Uugo, Rector Drath, Tagoar, and Mausoleum Mage as you level up. Don't miss out and click on my link right now. What's up guys, it's your boy Russian with another Raid Shadow Legends video. So we are going to be taking a look on, what rares you should take care of. So alright, so let's scroll down, let's see what champions you guys should invest on. First one, and it's not on the best champion to the worst champion, but one of them is you guys need to invest on Grandmaster. Basically, the reason why you want to do that is because his A1. His A1 attacks one enemy 3 times. One of the biggest issues people have in the most early game is Fire Knight, and the issue is to bring his shield down. Okay, so having a champion that can actually attack one enemy 3 times, it helps a lot, and the most of you make him fast enough. And even if you just keep him alive, don't worry about his damage or anything, he's a pretty good champion. His speed's 100, which is pretty decent. A lot of those champions, their speeds are below 100, so he's already fast. So if you guys worry about speed, put him in speed gear and everything, he should be able to help bring the shield down pretty quick. His A2 is not bad. You guys have attacks one enemy, has 40% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff on the target for 2 turns. And the A3 attacks one enemy, has 50% chance of placing a provoke debuff on the target for 1 turn. Now, for bosses, that doesn't really help much. So if you guys are using auto against a clan, not against clan boss, sorry, against a Fire Knight, what I would do is to lock A2 and A3 and use only the A1. Now, if you guys are manually, it's okay if you don't have another champion that does it. You guys can use Steel Crusher to help decrease the attack of the clan boss. Okay, so that's the first champion we're gonna be taking a look. And the next champion, we're gonna be looking at Conqueror. So Conqueror, I would probably, same thing with Grandmaster, not get him over 5 stars. So, but because basically you guys gonna have other champions that do the same jobs, I'm gonna be showing. But the moment you get a champion that can do the same, you just retire those champions, use them as food, or hold them for different areas of the game, like the Doom Tower, or even faction wars and everything. So Conqueror, why Conqueror? So his A1 attacks one enemy 2 times, which is not too bad for the Fire Knight. Not the best, but not the worst. On his A2 attacks one enemy, removes 2 random buffs from target. Same thing, a lot of areas of the game, you guys gonna have good use for that. But his A3 is what really matters, right? Now it's gonna matter mostly for the Ice Golem, and it attacks one enemy. Enemy skilled by this skill cannot be revived. So he plays a block revive, and it really helps against the minions. So something to take a look if you guys don't have another champion that does his job, or you want an extra champion to do it, is a pretty decent champion. Alright, so let's keep looking, and now we're gonna be at the High Elves. So High Elves, a couple of champions that's gonna help you a lot. So I'm not even going to say Elhain. Elhain's a pretty decent champion. Now, if you guys are against a spider, she's pretty decent, but she has other areas she can be used as well. She's a pretty decent, but you guys already know that princess, so let's take a look in Apothecary. Now, one of the main things, Apothecary is very strong. His speed is pretty good. He got 106 speed, but let's look at his kit and what really matters to us. One of the things is Scatterbolt. So his A1 attacks 3 times at random. But if you're fighting the Fire Knight, so you only have one enemy, you're gonna be attacking consistently the Fire Knight 3 times. So will help the shield down. Now on top of that, his A2 heals a target ally by 35% HP. This heal can be critical. What it means, you're healing him very heavy, plus you can actually get that to 50% HP. On the A3, he got placed a 30% increased speed buff in all allies for 2 turns. Fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. So he's putting a speed boost, he's increasing the turn meter, he's healing, and he's hitting the Fire Knight 3 times. Now, again, you guys need to take a look basically on if you're on auto or if you're manually, right? Because depending on the situation, if you already have a healer, you may want to keep him only on the A1. Now, if you don't have a healer, you can keep him pretty much open, okay? And run with him. The other thing you guys may want to do is like speed tune your team so you know when they get to the Fire Knights, the order they're gonna be using their abilities, but that's another story. And I will have another video for show you guys the basics about speed tuning. Now, another champion to invest, I actually have her to 6-star on my main account, and she helped me a lot, and it was on Clan Boss. And most of you guys put her on Poison Gear, okay? And it's RARES. So RARES A1 attacks one enemy and grants an extra turn if the target's killed. Her A2 removes one random debuff from all allies, what helps a lot in the most against Clan Boss, and has a 60% chance of placing a 30% increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. On her passive, counterattacks the attacker when an ally is attacked. Now, it's 1 per turn, and the best thing about that is against a Clan Boss, one of the things that can cause a lot of damage is poisons. Now, you know, poison gonna be a 2.5% poison, okay? But it still helps a lot. And she's pretty decent champion. She's not as fast as I would expect. She's on 9.4, but she does bring increased ally speed in dungeons by 16%. So pretty decent champion. A lot of people use her on Clan Boss, even like to mid game. So pretty interesting champion for you guys to invest. Now, the next champion we want to take a look is Reliquary Tender. Now, I know what you guys are gonna say, it's harder to get her because she is an Void champion, right? I understand. But I'm just explaining in case you guys get her. She's a very good champion. Basically because her A1 attacks one enemy and has a 20% chance of placing a 25% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. Her A2 removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a 15% continuous heal buff, that's a big one, on them for 2 turns, on a 3-turn cooldown. So you're healing and you're removing debuffs. Trust me, a lot of areas of the game, debuffs is pretty much what are gonna kill you. On the A3, revives an ally with 30% HP and fills their turn meter by 30% on a 5-turn cooldown. It is a little bit long, 5-turn cooldown, but it's still Reliquary Tender, one of the best rares in the game, and you guys should invest on her. Now, as you get better healers, as you get better reviver, you may stop leveling her, but I would say at least 5-star, and if necessary, even 6-star. Now we're getting to Sacred Order. Now, one that I usually don't mention as much, this champion, and it's Ato. Now, Ato against Fire Knight, she's pretty much like multi-tool because you can use her in so many areas of the game. I usually don't pick her, but she is probably one of the best champions, best choices for new players. So basically, her A1 attacks one enemy 3 times. So against Fire Knight is massive, actually against any boss, because she also has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weakened debuff for 2 turns, and it's per hit. So 3 times she has 75% chance, but that adds up total to 100% if booked, okay? So very interesting. Weaken just gonna help you create more damage against bosses, against clan boss, against all of them. On her A2, she attacks all enemies and has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. And on her A3, place a 25% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Place a 30% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns. If this champion current HP is less than 50%, gains an extra turn. So she can self-buff. Now it's on a 4-turn cooldown, so you have for 2, you won't have for 2 more unless you have a buff extender, etc. But very good champion. You can use her pretty much in all areas of the game against Spider, and most because her 8-2. Definitely a champion that is interesting to go to 6-star. Now let's talk about this guy. All right, Templar, big champion, definitely 6-star for some areas of the game. And the most you're doing free to play, you may not have a champion that does the same thing he does. Now, if you guys saw the Hell Hades competition, Hades actually used him to clear some really high areas, in the most against Scarab King. So his A1 attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of placing 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. On the A2, attacks 4 times at random. So also can be used against a Fire Knight. Sure, it's gonna be on a 3-turn cooldown if booked, but if you guys time everything really well, it's gonna do the job. Each hit has 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Place a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to defense. So you guys can use in a lot of areas of the game. Mostly what you gotta have to focus in is the timing of his abilities. On his passive, he attacks with this champion default skill whenever an enemy places a debuff on this champion. So every time he gets debuffed, he doesn't attack. That helps a lot, okay? So definitely a champion. Some areas on Doom Tower, he can pretty much solo, okay? You may need to have some help from other champions to get him to the boss, but he can solo a lot of content. Now, next one is not a rare champion, is actually an uncommon champion, and it's Armiger. Armiger, definitely 6-star. Unless you have some crazy pool and you got a champion that can do something very close to what he does, you definitely 6-star this guy. And basically, the areas he can go against pretty much anybody. I wouldn't invest so much for clan boss. You're probably gonna have other champions that can do it, but against dragon, definitely against ice golem, because he's all right. Let me pause for a second. Let's talk about his abilities and then talk about what he can do. I'm just excited. I love this guy. He's a Lego in disguise, okay? All right, so his A1 attacks one enemy and decrease the turn meter by 30%. If this attack's critical, what it means, always make critical and make sure you have enough accuracy to be able to land the debuff. And on his A2, attacks one enemy killed by this skill cannot be revived. And the damage is based on his defense and the enemy max HP. So, where do you use him? Pretty much everywhere. But basically, what you want to really do against is lock in his A1. You may use, I usually will say, if you're manually, use the A2 as you feel fit, because it causes a lot of damage, but his A1 decreases the turn meter by 30%. You make him fast enough, the Fire Knight will not be able to raise his shield back, as long as you have other champions that also, help the process. But definitely very good champion for that. I also use him a lot against Spider in most of my free to play. So Spider, very nice to keep the Spider not attacking you. You may have to deal with Spiderlings in a different way. And also this causes a lot of damage, the A2, and help destroy the Spider a lot faster. Now, I also want to do a shout out to Anointed, and basically it's because he also has on his A1, attacks one enemy 3 times and has 25% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Like I said, basically any champions you have that have 3 attacks on the A1, definitely very helpful against Fire Knight. On his A2, attacks one enemy 2 times, also not that bad. Each hit has 75% chance of stealing 1 buff from target. And on the A3, fills the turn meter of all allies by 25%. Place 30% increased crit rate in all allies for 2 turns. So really good champion to have if you don't have a different champion that does the same job. In the most, because increasing crit rate in the most early game is very helpful, okay? And it's on a 4-turn cooldown. So if you are manually, you just use all the skills as you feel fit. But definitely if you're manually and you have not speed tuned perfectly your team, definitely lock in and use only the A1. Now, one shout out to a champion that is also actually a common champion that I use multiple times, and it's Yeoman. So the reason why is not a good champion, okay? If you use him, it's just because you haven't pulled anybody who does 3 attacks. And it's because pretty much his only attack is volley. Attacks one enemy 3 times, each hit has 10% chance to decrease the turn meter by 20%. So, to be honest, I got this guy, I think, to 4-star, level 40, okay? And that was last year's Hell Hades competition because I did not have someone that could do that job. To be honest, if you build him hefty enough, I really don't think you can make him fast enough and hefty enough. And the most because you need to use some accuracy on that. And also the chances are bad, it's only 10% chance to decrease the turn meter. But in a pinch, pretty good champion, and trust me, very easy to come by. Now we're gonna skip all the way to Shadow King. And basically, I think you guys already know who I'm gonna be talking about. I got her all the way to 6-star on the Hell Hades free to play. She was massively helpful, okay? And I use her in many areas of the game, basically even against Dark Fae, okay? So, and it's Life Taker. Now, the thing with Life Taker, it has everything to do with her A1. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has 30% chance of placing 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. So against a Fire Knight, you guys know every time he's max you, he heals. So keeping him, the most because that the A1, not being able to heal, very helpful. And it hits 2 times, which is also not that bad. Her A2 attacks one enemy 3 times, and each hit has 50% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%. The third hit has 50% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. So basically, and if you book, you pretty much get everything close to 100%, all right? 75% total. So against a Fire Knight was massive. Against Spider, for until right prior to level stage 20, she was very helpful. After that, I had other champions that could do those jobs a little bit easier, but she pretty much carried me everywhere in the game. So not as much on Dragon, but everything else, that was extremely helpful. Definitely a champion I'll always invest on. Now, another champion that I should do a shout out, it's Odachi, and it's because, so his A1 attacks one enemy has 20% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn and damage based on defense. A2 attacks all enemies, place a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns equal to 20% of their max HP. So pretty much like not bad at all, right? Damage based on defense, and on the A3 place a block debuffs buff on all allies for 1 turn. Also place a 30% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns. So 3 turn cooldown, keeps block buffs. It's only for 1 turn, but that's fine. It's better than nothing. And increased defense for 2 turns. So you're gonna have increased defense for the most part, almost every time. So pretty good champion to invest if you pull him, okay? Now, other champions do the same job, but I will say not a bad champion to keep an eye on, keep an eye for. All right, guys, so there's a lot of other rares I want to cover, but this video is getting a little bit long, so we're gonna have tomorrow a part 2 of this video, all right? So I'm gonna stop for here. Really appreciate you guys. If you guys have any other champions, maybe I'm gonna cover them tomorrow anyway, but if you have other champions you actually like to focus and they're rare champions, let me know in the comments. And as always, I'll see you in the game.